Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we dive into today's episode, I want to let you guys know about an opportunity to learn some of the most important skills in life, if not the most important skills. And those are the skills of learning and doing so rapidly, effectively, and easily. You see, guys, I'm putting on a completely free 60-minute webinar that you guys can check out, where I will be going into my absolute best memory tips, learning tips, and speed reading tips so that you can immediately begin applying them and accelerating your learning of anything and everything. All you need to do to claim your spot in this free webinar is visit jle.vi/webinar. We have showings at many different times throughout the days for every time zone, but you have to log in and claim your spot. So that's jle.vi/webinar, and I really look forward to seeing what you guys achieve. This episode is brought to you by Organifi. You guys, one of the only things that every nutritional expert that we've had on the show seems to actually agree on is that we all need to eat more vegetables, eat more greens, eat organic, cut out all the processed junk. Well, who has the time, right? Who has the time to go out, do the shopping, make the salads, make the juices, make the smoothies? And that's what I love so much about Organifi. Their product is an all-organic green juice. It has all of the nutrients that you need. It tastes absolutely amazing, and it's made by wonderful people who I consider to be personal friends. And as listeners of this show, you guys can actually save 20% on your first order. And all you have to do is go to Organifi.com. That's ORGANIFI.com and use the coupon code SUPERHUMAN at checkout. Greetings, super friends, and welcome to this week's episode of the Becoming Superhuman podcast, which is brought to you by a review from Moshe Becker from Israel, who says, 5 stars, my favorite podcast. Can't wait for a new episode every Tuesday, the best of its kind. Thank you, Jonathan. Well, toda rabba, Moshe. I really, really appreciate the review. That is thank you very much in Hebrew. And I really would appreciate if anyone who hasn't left a review goes ahead and does so before next week's episode. On to today's episode, you guys. Today we are joined by a personal friend of mine that I have met through Genius Network, the mastermind that I recently joined and raved about. His name is Joel Weldon. As a former construction worker who turned down a 4-year college scholarship because he thought he wasn't smart enough, Joel Weldon went on to become living proof of the power of one idea. And that one idea will transform your life. For over 40 years, Joel has been one of the most highly respected and sought after keynote speakers and sales trainers in North America. And he's been an idea consultant and executive speech coach for some of the world's leading businesses. Companies that hired him 4 decades ago are still hiring him today. And it's because he gets results. Joel is the only speaker, by the way, to have earned all 4 of the highest honors in the speaking profession. Those are the Golden Gavel for his profound impact on corporate America, the coveted Communication and Leadership Award, and induction into the Speakers Hall of Fame. And in 2006, he was actually named the Legend of the Speaking Profession. As I said, Joel's an incredible guy. At 76 years old, you're going to see just how much energy and vitality he has about speaking and about everything else, about living life to its fullest. I really enjoyed the talk because we discussed what I believe is another exponential skill. We've talked about exponential skills as memory and writing, but Joel firmly believes with every fiber of his being that public speaking is another extension of that exponential skill set. I certainly agree. My career is certainly proof of that. So we talk about that. We talk about how everyone and anyone can and should become a better speaker. And we actually learn some things that even I, as someone who has been a public speaker for over half a decade, didn't know. And Joel gives me some incredible feedback that I'm sure you guys are going to benefit from as well. So it's a great episode. I really think you guys are going to enjoy it. So please enjoy this special episode with my super friend, Mr. Joel Weldon. Mr. Joel Weldon, welcome to the show. It is so great to reconnect. How are you?
Great, Jonathan, and great to be with you and your listener.
Absolutely. It is a pleasure to chat with you, and I'm so excited for all the different things that we said we were going to talk about last time when we had dinner. So I'm really looking forward to getting into it. So, Joel, I want to jump right in because I know your time is very, very valuable, and I want to ask you, why speaking? Why is speaking such an important and superhuman skill for every single individual in the audience to improve and eventually master? I think a lot of people probably say, I'm not a leader, I'm not a public speaker. Why speaking?
That's a great question to start our discussion with, because sometimes the biggest opportunity as you listen to this might be occurring and you don't even know it's happening. And what does that mean? You could be speaking somewhere and somebody in the audience listening to you is paying close attention and thinking to themselves, boy, that person, that's the person I want on my team, all because of the way you were able to communicate. I mean, people who speak effectively with clarity, conviction, confidence, and calmness are seen as leaders. And it's the single thing that separates the successful from the mega successful. And Jonathan, I bet that happened to you when you gave that 10X talk way back in 2015. It immediately positioned you as a thought leader. And that title is so great. I mean, what if schools taught us how to learn? And we both know this basic premise in answer to your question. Big money talks. That's it. When you can speak, you're going to get more business at whatever you're doing. And I know some of your listeners are still in school. Some haven't really decided on a career path yet. Others have been doing it for years. But in our discussion, no matter where you are on that continuum, never really starting out speaking or being an experienced speaker like yourself, you're going to learn in our discussion how you can be an even better speaker. And you're going to have some very practical, easy to use tools to help you. And when this discussion is over, you're going to be thrilled that you're here.
Absolutely. Joel, I want to corroborate what you're saying on two different points. One, you're absolutely right. The TEDx talk, even though, it didn't get the 10 million views, just the picture of me standing on that stage has been one of the most impactful things in my business. And as you say, I mean, even if people don't see the talk, the fact that I was chosen as a thought leader to stand on stage stands out, and people respond the most to website versions of our website, which have a picture of me public speaking versus a version of me just smiling and waving. And I think that's really interesting. And you also talked about, no matter what you do, well, we have a staff member who you're going to meet actually this month at Genius Network because I was so wowed by him. But the way that he got into our company was he did a lot of public speaking around his school, which helped him write a book, which basically he raised his profile and was selected to be valedictorian. And when he found his way to me, he had all these examples of, hey, I've been president of this club, and it all started with speaking on campus. So I think what you're saying is so incredibly important that it all comes from being recognized as a thought leader.
Absolutely.
So Joel, you talked about, and obviously I've had months to get familiar with your 10X talks through Genius Network and meet you, but you talk a lot about 5 different truths, 5 very, very important truths that you've learned after, 44 years of being a professional speaker, and you've coached, I believe, over 10,000 other speakers. So what are those truths?
Well, before we get into that, let's talk about some of the basic things before we get into those truths, because there's a couple of premises that would be really important. Number one, that when you can speak effectively, it can skyrocket your career, whether you're speaking at a meeting in your community for a businesswoman or a businessmen's group, if you have a website video, if you're doing Facebook videos or YouTube videos or doing a webinar or a podcast like we're doing, or being interviewed on the radio or television. And as you're listening, are you doing any of these things? And if you aren't, you should be. The second premise is that it's highly effective. I mean, we're going to spend, 40 minutes or so in this conversation, but it's going to reach thousands of people. So when you can speak effectively, you can multiply your effectiveness. 1 hour is not 1 hour times one person. It could be 10,000 hours. So that's why you should be speaking even more. But people always wonder, well, what am I going to speak about? Who do I speak to? Where do I go? Well, you speak about what you know. You know about learning. accelerated learning, super learning, your passion, your expertise. And who do you speak to? Well, you speak to your prospects or your niche or your fans or your community. You want to speak where prospects hang out. And when you do, you get more business. But one of the problems is we know that the fear of speaking is one of the top fears in the world. People have phobias. And I know that we have listeners all around the world, but in America, they do a study of phobias, and people are afraid of spiders and snakes. But speaking in front of a group is the number one fear. And Jerry Seinfeld, were you a fan of him, Jonathan? Okay, well, the great comedian said this: at a funeral, the person giving the eulogy would rather be in the coffin. I mean, death is better than speaking. But if your passion is greater than your fear, you act. And that's how you use speaking to grow your business. Position yourself as an expert in your niche. And when you speak effectively, then you can become a thought leader. And that's where you are, Jonathan. Even at your youthful age, I have socks older than you. So, well, remember, I'm old. Listen, I got an autographed copy of the Bible. I mean, you're in Tel Aviv. I remember when the Red Sea was just sick. So I go back a long time. But a thought leader is a recognized expert. And who recognizes them? Their customers, their clients, their fans, their prospects, industry leaders. And you become the go-to person in your niche when you can become an effective speaker. And you're there. Joe Polish at Genius Network is there. I'm there in the area of speaking skills and slalom water skiing. And we're into our slalom skiing now. Even though it's April, it's beautiful. We were skiing yesterday. It was 92 degrees. So if you want to be an expert at something, you need to become a thought leader. That's the next step. And that's the go-to person, which gets you recognition and raving fans and status. But it's not something you can claim. It's something you earn by your reputation, your results, and the respect that you get from the people that you do business with. So the question is, you're listening to this, where do you want to go? Are you living the life that you've dreamed of right now? And for 44 years, I've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs and business owners, and I know as you're listening right now, you wouldn't be here if you didn't have a passion or feel a calling to what you're doing and feel that you got a gift to share. But sometimes doubt comes in and you say to yourself, can I really do this? Well, trust me, I have 100% conviction based on thousands of testimonials that the number one premise, you can skyrocket your business if you become a better speaker. Even better speaker. That's what you want to be. And it's effective. Just what we're doing on this discussion. And the third premise is it's tweaks. It's little things that make the difference. There's a great expression, little hinges swing big doors. So the fastest way is having a system that lets you be you, being just you. So let me give you an example of a tweak, a power word. And this is a word that you could have used in your TED Talk. Because words make, as you know, mental images, and you teach that in your memory system. But if I said to you, Jonathan, I can help you earn more money. Now, that sounds on the surface a pretty good statement, but it probably is inferring that you're not doing very well financially. But if I add one four-letter word to that statement, that's it. I can help you earn even more money. That means you're already successful, but there's another level. Or I have a system to get you in better shape, which means you're probably fat and out of shape. Well, I know you got six-pack abs. I saw you on that stage. But if you add that word even, I can help you get in even better shape. So there's a simple tool. As you're listening to this, every time you say more or better, just add even. It edifies your audience. It makes them feel better about themselves. And it gives them credit. And you can have an even better memory. So that's an example of power words. And you don't want to say these guys, some guy's got a beer belly. Don't say that. Say he's got a liquid grains storage facility. That's what he's got. Don't say a woman is a nag. That's not good. I'm married 54 years to Judy. I would never say that. But if you want to comment about a woman, just say she's verbally repetitive. Much better. Much better. Or don't say somebody's a total ass. Words are important. Say he's got a rectal cranial inversion. That's the difference. All right. Well, you're laughing, and that's important. But so many times people think the way to grow their business, to make more money, Facebook ads and YouTube videos, webinars, podcasts, networking groups, email lists, mastermind groups, they're all worthless unless you can take your ideas and organize them and then connect them to the people you're trying to reach and present them clearly with engagement and a compelling call to action. That's the key. They're helpful, but you've got to connect with people and have clarity. And that's the big challenge I see in coaching so many people is they know what's going on, but their audience doesn't because they're thinking like themselves instead of thinking like the audience. And when you get connection, clarity, confidence, then you have significance. And I know as you're listening, maybe you're saying to yourself, well, I don't really speak. I don't have what am I going to speak on? Where do I even start? Here's a great idea. And Jonathan, you know the power of a 10-minute talk. We use this at Genius Network, which I'm sure that many of your people listening to this are experienced from you. A 10-minute talk is a great starting place. It gets you to be focused and concise, and it can lead you to a longer message, to a book or a video. And if you, I know that we have people from all over the world, but in the Super Bowl, which is a worldwide event, 30 seconds this year costs $5 million. So in effect, the 10-minute talk is $100 million of airtime on the Super Bowl commercial. You can say an awful lot in 10 minutes. And one of our clients from Genius Network, Stefan Wiesenbach, gave a 10-minute talk. He had 42 people in the room. He talked about his business, which was a coaching system, an engaged scorecard. 26 said yes, and he made $1.2 million in 10 minutes. Now, you're not going to make $1 million in 10 minutes, but it just shows the power of having a great 10-minute talk. So if you don't have a message, start with that. Your talk at TEDx in 2015 was about 14 and a half minutes. They vary with all the different venues around the world, somewhere between 10 and 18 minutes. So start small. And if you think about where do you want to be, a game changer could be a 10-minute talk. Key to wealth, opening the door for you. And at Genius Network, just in the last few years, I've been involved in 183 10-minute talks. So that's really the key, is thinking that way. And then when somebody asks you to speak, you should say, yes, I can. So those are my three premises to this message. And, you know, people usually ask me, you know, how old were you when you first gave your first talk?
Well, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. I want to come back to that really quickly because I want to actually comment on something you said that I think is really, really smart. You know, we talked recently about, I came out with this idea of what I call exponential skills, which is skills that make everything you do better. And the first one I identified obviously is memory, right? But then the second one was writing. And I believe that if you become a better writer, you better organize your thoughts. And what I'm starting to realize, and I want to point out to our audience, is that I think speaking is an extension of that in the same way, is very similar. If you can write well, you can organize your thoughts, you can move people emotionally. If you can speak well, you can do that even better. You can do that not just on stages, but in video. And certainly public speaking is one of those exponential skills alongside writing that has put me where I am today. So I just wanted to emphasize that to people and encourage them, if they haven't checked out the episode on exponential skills and about writing, that's also a fundamental episode to check out. So Joel, you were saying, how long have you been speaking? And also, I want to pick on you a little bit because you have this booming, phenomenal voice. You must have been pretty good at public speaking to begin with, right?
Well, not really. Not at all. I mean, I was 28 years old when I gave my first talk. And, you know, they say, sure, it's easy for you to talk about speaking. I mean, you're in the Speakers Hall of Fame. I've been paid, as you said in the introduction, at over 3,000 events around the world to talk at. But that's not where it started. It started in Far Rockaway High School, Queens, New York. 4 years of high school, never gave an oral report, never stood up in front of my classmates, terrified. I was so shy and self-conscious. I couldn't even lead my Sunday school class in silent prayer. I mean, that's bad. And I had no confidence. So I never talked to anybody. And I was only good at working with my hands. I didn't go to college. I went into the construction industry. And for the next 8 years, I was a carpenter, banging nails, digging ditches. And in 1967, I was 26 years old. I was making $62 a week as a carpenter. And then I got into a sales position. I did miserably. 2 years later, I ended up having to do a sales meeting. Now, if you think about where you started, do you remember when you were in high school, were you outgoing and gregarious as you listened to this message, wherever you are in the world? Or were you shy and self-conscious? Well, if you were like me, there's hope. I wasn't high school valedictorian. I couldn't even spell valedictorian. But a turning point occurred on September 4th, 1969, when I gave my first talk in front of a group. And at that time, I was 28 years old. There were 17 people in the room, Jonathan. And after the meeting, everybody left. And then a man walks back in the room and he says, Joel, would you like some feedback on the meeting? Now, let's stop. If that was you, you've never spoken before in front of a group. You give this little talk for about 40 minutes, and then somebody says, would you like feedback? Well, I hesitantly said yes. And he looked at me, put his arm on my shoulder. He was taller than me. And he said, this was the worst meeting I've ever been to. And young man, you're the worst speaker I've ever heard in my whole life. I cried. He said, stop crying. You're not a baby. Well, I felt such despair. Now, if somebody said that to you, how would you feel? What would you do? And he said, stop crying. I'm going to fix you. I said, how are you going to fix me? You're going to come to Toastmasters with me on Tuesday. And you're going to join that club and we're going to teach you how to speak. And Jonathan, on September 9th, 1969, I'll never forget it because it's all nines, 9th month, 9th day, and 69, 9th year of that decade. I joined the Tempe, Arizona Toastmasters, and that was a defining moment. Have you ever made a decision that changed your life forever? Well, that decision was it, Jonathan. You said yes. Well, I'm sure as you're listening, you've had some kind of a life-changing decision. And that led to a 5-year journey in Toastmasters. And I discovered that speaking is a learned skill. And after 5 years, my wife, Judy, encouraged me to enter a speech contest in our little club with 25 members. And I won. First time I ever won. And I went all the way to the world finals. There were 60,000 competitors in 1974. And I placed in the top 3 in the world. Now, can you imagine a guy who couldn't even lead his Sunday school class in silent prayer? If that was you, how would you feel? I mean, what would you think? Then a guy calls me up and he says, because it was written in the Arizona Republic, our biggest newspaper in the state, young man places in the top 3 in the world. And the phone rings, and a guy named Paul Cronin, I'll never forget him, was the Independent Garage Owners Association director. He said, would you come and give a speech? I said, why? He said, well, I read in the paper you won a speech contest. You must be good. We need a speaker. I said, sure, I'll show up. He said, all right, we got to talk money. I said, what do you mean? He said, how does $25 sound? I said, well, I guess that's okay. Where do I mail the check to? He said, no. We're going to give you $25. I said, I get $25? He said, yes. And that was when I began my professional speaking career. I was making $62.50 a week when I was 26 years old. And now I was getting $25 at age 33 for a short talk. 10 years later, I was in the Speakers Hall of Fame. I was charging $10,000 an hour for a talk. I had 5 different audio cassette programs, speaking for Fortune 500 and 100 companies. I was making over $1 million a year because big money talks. And we lived in a little house there. We had 1,900 square feet. We still live in the same house. We've added 7 additions. It's approaching 9,000 square feet. And I mentioned that I'm a competitive water skier. We have a private ski lake out in the desert, an hour from Scottsdale, where we have a second home there. They all slalom ski. And we have a beautiful houseboat at Lake Powell that we spend 2 months a year for the last 30 years on. And all of that occurred because I learned how to speak. My grandson just got accepted to Annapolis, my youngest grandson. And one of the things they told him was the reason was that he was such an effective speaker. Student class president, captain of the football team, wrestling team, baseball team, but it was his speaking skills. So if I've lived this life on one decision, I'm 76 years old. And if you think about these last 44 years, it came from one decision to be an effective speaker. And it's a learned skill.
Incredible. I want to point something out before I touch on that learned skill, which is just the power of mentorship. I mean, we've talked before, and I always encourage everyone in our audience to seek out mentors. And also, I recently did a post on Genius Network talking about the power of being in that right room. And you sought out not just a mentor, but a mentor who said, hey, you need to get in this room. It's called Toastmasters, and you need to put your butt in that chair. And just, wow, I mean, your entire career built off those two things, a great mentor and being in the right room. I think it's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Well, and I'm still in Toastmasters. Matter of fact, at 12 o'clock today, which is in 2.5 hours from now, I'm going to be in my Chats Toastmasters Club in Scottsdale. And every Monday that I'm in, and my daughter is a member of the club. And she has won the state speaking contest twice as a humorous speaker. And her business is now making humorous videos, all because she learned to speak. So it's one of the most valuable skills. But so many people make mistakes. And just in case somebody gets off, you said it was okay to send them this ebook I wrote. It's called 5 Mistakes Ordinary Speakers Make. So if you're listening, just text to this phone number, 480-526-5888, and just write ebook. And I'll send you this book. It's 9 pages long. It's just about a 5 or 10 minute read, but you'll get some great ideas. And the question really for you at this point as you're listening, what discoveries have you made that can change your life, that have altered it? So can I share the 3 things that really are the most important discoveries about speaking as our time is getting down to close to our 15-minute mark? It's a learned skill. I mentioned that. That when you were born, Jonathan, when you were born, they didn't hold you up in front of Mrs. Levy and say, look, you have a TEDx speaker here. No, you were a little baby, maybe 7 pounds, and you learned everything just like you teach in your courses. We learn it by practicing it. Sure, we have talents, but you can learn skills outside of your talent area. And I sure did. I had no talent for speaking, no interest, but you can learn it. And one of my great examples comes from Toronto, Canada. His name is Stephen Hamer. He's a financial advisor. And in 2015, the same month in October that you gave your talk, he gave his first 10-minute talk, and he had never spoken before. He used the tools that I provided him. He got a standing ovation, and he wrote me this email. It's so short. My life changed today. I now have a system I can repurpose. And another person I coach, Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy's got 5,000 paid talks. He and I are in the Hall of Fame. And he says the system is like the gold standard. It saves people decades of time. So whether you're like Stephen and never talked, or somebody like Brian, these ideas can make a difference. The second discovery is to be yourself. That's what I liked about your TEDx talk. I know what you're like, and you were the exact same on that stage in Tel Aviv. So if you're happy and bubbly, if you're tough and forceful, speak tough and forceful. If you're nerdy and analytical and monotone, I think that's how you should speak, because it's not a performance. That's what I loved about your TEDx talk. It was you. That effective speaking is a conversation with your audience, just like I'm talking to you in this discussion. You need to be congruent. And when you're relaxed. So if you're low-keyed, quiet, and reserved, say something like this. Don't let my laid-back style fool you. Inside, I'm really excited about what we're talking about, but it just doesn't show on the outside. And then if you're full of energy and enthusiasm, if you were the captain of the Titanic, you probably would have been telling people we're just stopping for ice. No, if you're that way, be that way. Like I told you when I'm old, I'm introduced, my Social Security number's 5. I was a busboy at the Last Supper. Laugh at yourself. And if you're bald, laugh at your head. If you're bald, I have a client and he rubs his head and he says, it's not good for your love life if you have no hair. Well, think about this. If you have a dog and your dog lost all its hair, would you pet it? And the audience roars. And it's laughing at yourself. And you did that. You had 4 laughs in the first 5 minutes of that TEDx talk. And that's important, that you be you. And there are some people who just don't have a lot of energy. They brighten a whole room and they leave. You don't have to be somebody different. You can be yourself. Just let the audience know that. Being congruent. And think about this great quote from Oscar Wilde, the great writer. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. And the third, let me give you the third discovery, and then we can get into those 5 secrets quickly. It's called the lesson of the bus. And this is a simple tool for you every time you give a talk, Jonathan. Just imagine there's a bus driver, passengers, a sign, and the bus. Well, you're the bus driver. The passengers are the audience. The bus is your message. And the sign on the bus is your title or theme. I call it the golden thread. And you did that so effectively, and hopefully you could share that TEDx talk with people who are watching this interview, because it would be such a great tool. You did so many things right, but you got them on the bus, and you kept them on the bus. And when you use a system, you get relaxed. Your message is clearer, and you can grow your business. So hopefully you're learning some things.
Absolutely.
Does this make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I do want to make sure and ask you about these truths, because I've heard you talk about them. I've heard you mention them. So do share.
All right. Number 1, how do you always know how to deliver the right message? This is secret number 1. So let me just give you this. And we have not practiced this, right? You don't have any idea what I'm going to say. So let's say tonight, Jonathan, you're going to talk to people about safe driving. I got 50 people coming to a hotel room. You're the speaker about safe driving. Quickly give me some talking points. What are you going to tell them not to do to be a safe driver? Go.
Texting. Drinking.
No texting when you drive. No drinking when you drive.
No
all right. What should they do? No distractions. What
focus
should they
on the road.
Focus on the road. Anything
Pull
about
over if they get too tired.
Okay.
Follow traffic laws.
Okay. Very nice. Unfortunately, all wrong. Sorry. Because you didn't know the first secret. The first secret is to always ask this question. Who is the audience?
Yes.
So now ask me, who is the audience?
KYA. Who is my audience?
Oh, they're NASCAR drivers. They're race car drivers. There's been accidents on the track, and they wanted you to come in and talk. They saw that TEDx talk. They know you're a great communicator. So let's go over that. The texting, the drinking. Is that a problem, do you think, for race car drivers? To be offensive? No, it's not tailgate things that. All right. So you can see how simple that is if you always start with who is your audience. Second secret, how do you connect with an audience immediately? And I call it the Nfv Formula. N stands for needs. What does your audience need to be doing, thinking, or feeling they're not doing now? What are their fears? What are they concerned about, worried about, fearful about? What keeps them up at night? And the third is victories. Needs, fears, victories. What are their successes, their achievements, their wins, their claims to fame? And if you can tie in your content, your message on that TEDx talk was learning. And I have some notes on that. You used the word learning 21 times in the first 4.5 minutes. It was impossible not to understand what you were saying. And that's secret number 3. Secret number 3 is the golden thread. Wow. And your golden thread in that message was there's an even better way to learn. That's what you talked about. So the golden thread is one sentence that summarizes what you're going to say, whether it's in 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, or 4-hour seminar. What is your message about in one sentence? And ordinary speakers have so many different directions. And as you're listening to this, how many times have you been at a meeting, hearing a speaker, turn to the person next to you and say, what are they talking about? Where is this going? I mean, Jonathan, you've had that all the time. You need a single focus. And your single word was learning. And I imagine if I counted that whole 14.5 minutes, it was probably between 40 and 50 times you used learning, learner, or learning in some format. You want to keep repeating the golden thread in a video, on an audio, and in front of a live group. It's so important to keep the focus of your audience.
Is that why in some TED Talks you hear people almost out of nowhere, in between paragraphs, drives the point home? Like, yeah, and schools kill creativity. In fact, schools kill creativity so much, it's almost like they're interrupting themselves to drive the golden thread in an extra time. Love that.
Absolutely. That's and you did that continually. So let's go to the fourth secret. How do you keep an audience fully engaged? And this is so simple. It's called the you connection. So many times a speaker is all about themselves. And every time you use I, me, or mine, when you're speaking on a video, an audio, an interview, I, just think of the audience saying, so what and who cares? What does that have to do with me? The key word are you, yours, and you'll. And let me give you a tweak from your presentation. You used you guys 3 times. If you replay our interview, Jonathan, when I'm talking to you, I mention Jonathan. When I'm talking to your listener, I say you. So there's only one person when you're speaking. There could be 1,000 people in the room, but use you, not all of you. And then make it about them. So many times you hear speakers say, I love this idea. This is my favorite idea. Well, my mind says, good, well, go in the closet and tell it to yourself. What if you just said, you're going to love this idea? This is going to be one of your best takeaways. It's all about your audience. It's not about you. And look at your last email. Any email you wrote to a customer or a client or even a friend, count how many times you said I or versus you. Let me give you an example. If somebody was to write you a letter about this interview, Jonathan, I love the interview. I love what I heard. It was so valuable to me. I got so many great ideas. Pat. And they said, that's all I. What if they said the same thing? Jonathan, your guests were amazing. You always provide such valuable information. You provided so many wonderful ideas. You promised a lot. You delivered even more. You are so much appreciated, Pat. Not a single I in that sentence. And that's what you need to look at. How can you communicate to your audience? It's one person. That's all they're interested in is what's important to them.
This is very important.
So that's the fifth D
this
is
is
simple.
Phenomenal.
The fifth secret is have a 10-minute talk. Use these tools and come up with something that positions you so that when somebody says, hey, could you come and give a talk? Yes. And if you've got something, you can either make it longer or shorter, as long as you don't make mistakes. So remember that phone number, 480-526.
Phenomenal. Absolutely. And in fact, I want to point out, Joel, that it's the second time you've said something that is related to my favorite book of all time, which is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the first time, I'm the memory guy, right? You talked about telling people even better memory, even more money. Give people, Dale Carnegie calls it, give people a high reputation to live up to. Don't put them down. And the second one is speak in terms of other people's interests. Don't say I. The third one, you also mentioned that you use my name a lot, which I want to point out to people is another superhuman people skill that Dale Carnegie says. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest sound in any language. So I just wanted to give some appreciation because I can see why you've been so successful as a speaker.
Well, do we have enough time to give you some feedback on that TEDx talk that the listener can see
Yes.
that? All right, so I've got my notes here. So let me go over all the things you did well. I gave you a 9.4 on a 1 to 10 scale. And I'm going to go through this fast so you can re-listen to this. The opening. The way that we learn is broken. Boy, that was such a startling, powerful statement. You got everybody on the bus immediately. And the other thing you did so well, you stood absolutely still when you said that. And then you got into the golden thread that there's got to be a better way to learn. I would just add the word even in there. And I told you in the first 4.5 minutes, you used learn 21 times. You had those laughs, so you had humor. And then you gave the World War II photograph, which was so good, that famous scene of the kiss in Times Square. So you proved your point with an example. The other thing that was good, number 5, you were so calm, clear, and confident. And that led to connection to your audience. And number 6, it was impossible to be misunderstanding what you said because you only said one thing. It was all about learning. 14.5 minutes about that word learn in different ways. And perhaps the most impressive thing was you just had a conversation. There was no difference between the Jonathan that sat next to me at dinner or the Jonathan that was on stage at TEDx. So that's why it was a 9.4. So how do you pick up 0.5 of a point, 5 more to get a 9.9? Remember, there's nobody that's perfect. Well, there is one. That's the one your spouse could have married. And if you're married, you might have remembered that. All right, so let me give you the 5 suggestions. You started to pace, you stood strong, and then you kept wandering around. One thing is, moving is great, but you think of 3 parts of the room. You have a right, center, and left. Go to the right and talk. Maybe finish a thought or a paragraph. And then go to the middle or go to the other side. But don't keep moving back and forth because people then are trying to look at the head in front of them and see you in between those heads. Number 2, we talked about that earlier, not you guys, because you had that 3 times. It's you. Number 3 was add the word even every time you say more and better. Number 4, at 12 minutes and 21 seconds in on a 14.5-minute talk, you said, so what's the idea I want to impart to you? That needs to be in the first minute. You need to give them the sign on the bus. I call it opening with your close. Tell them in the beginning where we're going with this. So we open this. This is about how to use speaking for you to be even more successful. And number 5, and this is something everybody does, you said thank you as your last 2 words. Never end with thank you. You challenge your audience. You congratulate your audience. When you say thank you, it means you got something. When you said thank you, oh, you made me feel so good. You reinforced my ego. I'm going to have this video and make so much money on it. No, the reason you're speaking is to help them. So here's what you said, and let me give you an even better ending. You said, if you ask me, our future depends on it. Thank you. So you were talking about learning. Remember that? Okay, what if you had said, if you would ask me, our future depends on it. What if they asked you, what will you say? Think about it. What will you say? Bam! That's your close. Even better. Even better.
It's better. It's better. I love all those feedback points. I do think that the TEDx organizer required us to say thank you. But I'm guilty of doing this in my webinars, and I often say thank you. And you're right. It is absolutely.
Well, let me tell you when you say thank you, because they gave you a huge applause, right? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
There you go.
Then you say thank you.
There you go.
You know, the words you use are so important. This guy looks at his girlfriend and he says, when I look at you, time stands still. Oh, she falls into his arms and kisses him. His buddy overhears it, says, I'm going to try that with my girlfriend, but he doesn't get the words right. And he says to her, when I look at you, your face could stop a clock. That's going to get the same response. You're going to grow your income, your business, and your career. Speaking effectively is the key. Using the right words, delivered in the right way. Use those 5 secrets. Make sure you don't do those 5 mistakes. And it can be a wonderful experience for you. And then you can make it a great day every day.
Phenomenal. Joel Weldon, I want to thank you so much for spending your time and sharing your energy with us today. I know what a busy schedule you have. Coaching thousands of people. I hope to be one of them soon. I'm going to heed your words of advice and do a 10-minute talk. I need some advice on which topic to choose. So I'll talk to you and I'll talk to Gina about that at Genius Network. But I want to thank you again. We're going to make sure to put that phone number that people can text in the show notes. We're going to make sure to make all that stuff available to everyone. So thank you again for your time.
And make it a great day every day. And use speaking to grow your success in whatever area you want.
All right, super friends, that is all we have for you today. But I hope you guys really enjoyed the show, and I hope you learned a ton of actionable information, tips, advice that will help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or drop us a quick little note on the Twitter machine at GoSuperhuman. Also, if you have any ideas for anyone out there who you would love to see on the show, we always love to hear your recommendations. You can submit on our website, or you can just drop us an email and let us know. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.